Most of all, I want to thank the millions of hardworking Americans across the nation who have always been the heart and soul of this really great movement. We've been through so much together, and today you showed up in record numbers to deliver a victory like probably like no other. This was something special, and we're gonna pay you back. We're gonna do the best job. We're gonna turn it around. It's got to be turned around. It's got to be turned around fast, and we're gonna turn it around. We're gonna do it in every way, with so many ways, but we're gonna do it in every way. This will forever be remembered as the day the American people regained control of their country.
Worth noting, of course, if you're just joining us, that Kamala Harris hasn't spoken. Her advisers appeared on stage in Washington and said she wouldn't speak tonight. Waleed and Steve on the ground there, or on the rooftop, in fact, in Washington, D.C. What did you make of that speech and the messaging in it? I think, Steve, you pointed out the tone was slightly more conciliatory than it has been for parts of this campaign, at least.
Well, in my view, I think it's a fine tone, a better tone that he's been setting. It's not American carnage. He's not talking about being a dictator on the first day of his presidency. It's a more of a healing type tone, and it's something we haven't heard much from Donald Trump. I'll also tell you, when he said it was a very different kind of a victory, a major victory, he wasn't exaggerating. He's actually right. This is a huge and different kind of win that we haven't seen in American politics for a long time.
I do recall his victory speech in 2016 was also quite conciliatory. So, in those moments, I think that's the tone he tends to strike.
He sounds introspective and kind of more thoughtful in a way, and also having some fun.
The inauguration speech may be a different matter, and I suppose that's where we see the tone of the presidency set. So I guess the flip side of all of this is there's a victor, the Republicans. In any grand final and any Super Bowl, Steve, there are recriminations for the loser. The Democrats, this is as bad a loss as you could probably have conceived, really. What have they done wrong here?
Well, look, I think some people get upset with my framing of it. I think when you lose like this, everything was wrong. Kamala Harris was vice president of the United States, but was not very well known to the American public. Joe Biden, if he was going to step out, probably stepped out too late, didn't give her enough time to become better known to the nation. I also think she had some problems because, on TV, when I'm talking to all of you, I'm often winging it, coming up with things. She didn't tend to wing it very well when it came to responding to what her economic plan was about or how she was going to get certain other kinds of things done, the nuts and bolts of policy. Now, Donald Trump, just to be fair, wasn't very good at that either, but no one expected it of him. But from her, they expected a little bit more than I think they got when it came to what are you going to do with the economy? How are you different from Joe Biden? What are you going to do with the Israel-Gaza war that's different from the White House? Those kinds of things she didn't have a really good answer for. And I think they sort of stacked up, and she felt a little bit like part of the Biden bland package.
I think what we take from that is that Steve, as someone who's winging it, would have been a far better choice as the nominee. I do notice.
Absolutely.
I noticed your red tie, though, Steve. So perhaps the wrong party. We heard
Waleed,
the guys
Steve,
back in the studio talking there. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, I just wanted to jump in because in that speech from Trump, we also heard him promise that he's going to lead America into the golden age of today. Do you think that is possible, Steve? I mean, now that he has won so overwhelmingly, he wants to turn it around fast. Is that going to actually be possible now?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on what you're trying to turn around. He can certainly impose tariffs right away. You can drive. I mean, look, America's changing. Globalization is changing. America used to be this nation where globalization meant America sprawling everywhere. We're going to become more like China. We're going to become, in a way, more mercantilist as a nation. We're going to have tariffs and barriers, and you're going to see protected sectors. And I think in that line, we're going to try to get really good and make industrial policy great again. So it's going to be picking winners and losers, and Donald Trump's going to be, going to want to love that.
Just on the message, we heard the guys in the studio talking about how the Republican message, Donald Trump's message, was very direct. Jobs, migration. The Democrats' message
Crime.
tended to be, crime. The Democrats' message tended to be more theoretical, democracy, these sorts of things. Do you think that was a decisive element in this election?
You know, at the beginning, I think it was one of the downfalls of Joe Biden. Although I have to say something very controversial here. Joe Biden might have done pretty well particularly in the battleground states where the manufacturing crowd sort of liked him. But democracy was not a big sales pitch that worked. People cared about the price of eggs, butter, and toast.
And it's
There you
interesting.
go.
It's interesting as well,
Bring
Steve.
Biden back for the next election. I can only assume.
It was interesting you said, Steve, that you didn't think that Kamala had enough time for viewers and voters to get to know her because she kind of had this golden run. She didn't win a primary. I think her popularity was sitting at 28% as vice president. She was parachuted into this role. She had celebrity endorsement after celebrity endorsement, $1 billion worth of kind of campaign funds behind her. And she just couldn't quite crack it. She flip-flopped on everything from, fracking to what was going on, how to handle Israel and Gaza. It seemed to me, besides abortion, which she was very strong and very clear on, she didn't really have much of a vision.
Well, she didn't close the deal, that's for sure. But, let's give her some credit. There was in the polls a very clear deficit where Joe Biden saw himself losing places like Virginia, which he couldn't do that. I mean, I think in the numbers they were looking at that time, Joe Biden was down. And people perceived her picking up that deficit very quickly, unifying the party, rallying around. And there was a surge of enthusiasm for her. And then she plateaued and went flat. And we stopped hearing about these exciting and different things. And it was like, I was like going, you were a U.S. Senator for 6 years. You were Vice President for 4 years. Didn't you pick up some more, ideas on the job?
Yeah.
And I don't want to knock her, but I do think that was a missing element where people were trying to fill in the gaps of what do we know about her? What does she stand for? And, if you're going to run against essentially your old boss, she probably need to kick him a few times.
Yeah,
Donald Trump
especially
had
after
no
the
fear of
garbage
kicking
comment.
anyone, and that's entertaining, Yeah.
What this reminds me of a little bit, guys, slightly different, but a little bit, is the Gillard-Rudd era when Julia Gillard was in trouble and Kevin Rudd came in, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
He couldn't quite get over, and now there's this argument: did he save the furniture or was he never going to win? And I guess that's the argument of history.
I'm
Anyway,
interested
And
to
of course,
know,
Kevin
Steve,
Rudd is the ambassador just a few blocks away right now.
That's a very good point.
I just wonder if Biden really meant to put on that MAGA hat and cause all those headlines as well. It seems like he was working against her in so many ways. Fellas, we will check in with you a little later in the show.